Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Chad, and you have landed on Speaking of Trauma. My co host is
Heather.
Heather, and we are just two friends that decided that we would like to speak about trauma and share that with others. So we started this channel, and really it's just about our personal experience and the things that we've learned and tried and failed and been successful. It's messy. It can be hard and uncomfortable, but the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it and the better we get at being comfortable with these sort of conversations. So we're cool with that. And we want to talk about something today. And Heather's going to give you a little intro about.
Yeah, so this was actually inspired by one of you guys who wrote to us after hearing our first episode and said something about not even realizing that some of the things that have happened in your past might have been traumatic. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. And Chad had a really great idea of maybe we should do an episode talking about what trauma is and what it isn't, because I think it'll be surprising to a lot of people. And then also go into its connection to shame.
Yeah. So last week we did talk about complex PTSD and PTSD, and we've tried to talk off camera about things that perhaps we struggle with most or we feel are most significant. And so we ended up adding shame to the list because if you have trauma, if you've done any research on trauma or know someone, you very quickly realize that that goes hand in hand, trauma and shame. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, but we want to start doing, this is episode 2. We want to start before we get into the topic, do a little check-in. So personally, I have been in inpatient treatment 4 times in my life. 3 of them were for substances, and then the last one was for complex PTSD and trauma. This is always something that is an important part of the treatment programs, at least the ones that I've been in, because speaking as an addict, we oftentimes lose touch with our body. We don't feel our feelings. We don't know where they feel because my whole goal in life was to suppress everything and not feel. So I did a pretty good job of that for quite a while, but each day it's really important. Heather and I do this like on our own with other people, but I think it's a really healthy practice and we're just going to call it a check-in. So I'll go ahead and start. So when we check in, we kind of look at our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Spiritual is not religion, by the way. I mean, it can be if you want it to be, but it's not that. So physically, I feel okay today. I deal with a lot of aches and pains generally, but nothing abnormal. But I had a really hard day yesterday and that takes it out. My body just responds with fatigue and like achy, like it's almost like I have a cold or something. It's an emotional hangover. So physically, I feel a little bit rough, but overall pretty good. Emotionally, I'm still working on some stuff from yesterday. It's hard to explain, but there are days when emotionally, I don't know what's happening, but it's negative. And I spend my time and energy checking in with myself and like what's going on and see if I can, it's exhausting, but emotionally, I just feel drained today. And then spiritually, I've been kind of slacking on any sort of spiritual focus, like my meditation. So yeah, it's spiritually, I just feel a little bit kind of flat today. So that's kind
That's
of me in
fine.
general. How are you doing today?
Well, that was actually a great check in. I guess to start with spiritually, I've also been slacking on doing things like meditation. And I even consider yoga a spiritual sort of practice for me. And I don't know why I let those things go because those are two of the, like, they have the biggest impact on me and my mental health. But for some reason, those are the ones that end up going first. And actually, that's a great tip for any of you out there. Maybe you don't have access to therapy or you're just looking for something to help you feel better. Yoga and meditation, like scientifically backed, that stuff totally helps trauma.
I
So
agree.
I need to be getting back into that because also physically, I also hurt pretty much every day. It's generally like my neck and my shoulders.
Oh.
And today, at least as of right now, it's not so bad. But usually by the end of the day, I'm pretty sore. And I think that's because I hold myself really tense.
Right.
Or if something does happen that's like an emotional sort of thing or anything that might be triggering, then yeah, my body just, the whole thing hurts and I'm done. But I wouldn't have even thought you were fatigued today. You actually seem very, very on it.
Well, I'm really excited about what we're doing, and it's always fun to talk with you about this stuff, and I enjoy this. So it does help. But yeah, I'm not like putting up a front or anything. I'm able to, like, today's okay. It's starting off pretty good, but yeah, it takes a little extra effort. But hey, that's living with trauma, right?
Yep. And actually, Chad and I both did really well today. It took us, what, the better part of an hour to actually start recording because everything was going wrong
Right.
from my lights and camera turning off to the resolution to just Chad's background.
Mm-hmm.
And normally those are things that I think both would get us dysregulated pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
we totally rocked it. Good job.
And we stuck with it.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I would have been like, fuck this. I'm done for the day. I'm
Yeah.
I might record, tomorrow or something, but that's why we're teaming up. Like it really does help each individual when you're working with a team. So,
Definitely.
okay. Anything else with check in?
No, I think that's probably good. Emotionally, I'm doing all right. Feeling pretty
Oh,
good. I'm
yeah, you
excited
didn't
to
do
be
that.
talking to you today.
Yeah. All right. Good. So we're all right. That's really important though, for those of you that haven't ever done like a daily check in, even with yourself. If you have somebody else to do it, that's great. But you'd be surprised. It's like, I'm not sure how I feel. Let me think about this. And that's the point of it, like to check in with yourself. Well, let's talk a little bit more about trauma
Yes.
and what that means. Heather, you had quite a few good definitions that, we were looking at yesterday. Do you
Hmm.
want to kind of define it for us or give us some definitions that we can keep in mind while we talk about this?
Yeah. So, first of all, Chad and I, we are not mental health professionals. We're not anything like that. So, I thought it would be good to reference things that experts on trauma have said and how they define it. So, so first of all, it's possible to have a traumatic experience without it turning into PTSD or complex PTSD. So that's really important to know first. And what I think will surprise a lot of people is that trauma actually has nothing to do with the event itself. So a lot of people think of trauma or traumatic experiences having to be really extreme things like, war or an accident or abuse. And like those things absolutely can be traumatic. But what trauma really is, it's about the impact that that experience had on you and how it imprinted itself into your brain and body.
That's why some people develop in the same scenario. Two people can go through the exact same traumatic event, and one process it quickly and in a healthy way and move on. Someone else, it just sticks and
Hmm.
they can't ever or don't realize they need to or what. So it can look quite different, right?
Yeah.
I love what you put, the one that I really love on there with Gabor Mate. Trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside of you.
Hmm.
So a traumatic event or series of traumatic events are what lead to the development of trauma. So what's happening inside me when I've been abused? That,
Hmm.
that's the trauma as a result of traumatic event of abuse. And it's important to distinguish between them because Like trauma is not, I thought that it was something that happened to me
Hmm.
because I was traumatized, right? It was a trauma happened, but that's not like I'm starting to understand that trauma happens inside of you. And that helps because that's where I can start looking. Nothing
Right.
I can do about what happened
Hmm.
now, then, in the future, never. Like that's not in my control. But the trauma that takes place inside of me or develops, I can work with that if I know I have it. But that's the other
Totally.
thing is people go through hard situations. Maybe they're just a really resilient person that can handle a lot more. I used to hate people like that, by the way. I think it's so tough. But they can go through something and it be a traumatic event, but not develop trauma that they live with, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's that's an important like distinction. But there could be another person. I always talk about like my brother and I had the same childhood, but he doesn't have trauma as a result of it. And that's because we're two different people and how things impact us are just different. We're just different people. So there's no, well, he should have trauma because I have, that's not how it works. So you can't compare yourself to others. That's kind of the point I'm getting at. I would always look at them.
Hmm.
Man, they've got trauma. Holy shit. Did you hear what they said happened to them? It
Right.
was always worse, right? Cause then I didn't have trauma. But with addiction, same thing. I'm not an addict because if you listen to them, that Heather chick, man, she's really fucked up. That's what addiction looks like. So if we can take a step back, if I step back from it and just say, okay, what happened inside of me, then I don't have to factor in the other people.
Hmm.
But well, any other thoughts about defining trauma before I was about to segue and I thought maybe we just
Yeah.
need to.
I pulled up this quote from Dr. Kolk, who's like the world's leading expert on trauma. He said the crucial issue is not that the trauma occurred, but how it was internalized and encoded in the victim's mind, body, and brain. And that's the thing that's really important too for people to understand is it's not just recalling a bad memory and feeling bad about it. It actually rewires your brain and your body.
Yeah, that adds a little relief, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not just I'm dwelling on things. It's like, nope,
Yeah.
this actually just altered my physiology completely.
Uh-huh. And it allows you to see that you didn't do anything to cause this or like it's something that happens to your nervous system and your body and your brain and all that and results in symptoms that you start to notice. But
Hmm.
if we see it in this way, as opposed to how I used to view it, I should have been able to just get over it. I should
Right.
have been able to like look at my brother. He doesn't have trauma. I should be able to do that. Like the comparing, that's really dangerous because I was looking for a way to get out of the fact that I have trauma.
Hmm.
Like, well, but they don't. And that was the same situation. So I must not.
Right. Right.
Did, was that how you felt? Or have you always seen it as this neurological damage?
No, it wasn't until I think it was once I read The Body Keeps the Score. Or actually, no, I think it's actually when I started learning about the adverse childhood experiences study that's when I really started to understand like, oh, no, yeah, trauma is not you're just dwelling on things, which is something that I was told. It actually this is why I can't seem to control, when I'm triggered or control or somehow logic or reason away what these events did to me because it quite literally rewires your brain. Like you're living with a different central nervous system after trauma.
Right. That's part of that change that happens. And again,
Hmm.
I go back to that indicates that it's not something that is your fault, not
Right.
something that you're choosing to do or say or be like, right?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we just like can do whatever we want. Oh, I have trauma, so I'm a dick to these people.
Right.
Like
We're always responsible for how we treat other people.
exactly. It's not something that I had any control over. Being abused was not a choice. Like no one chooses to be abused. But after that, it's, I can choose to heal, or I can choose to accept, or I can choose
Yeah.
to fight this idea, or which I did all that. Like most of us that go through therapy and discovery of whatever, for me, it was sexual abuse, this discovery of suppressed memories. That takes a little time to sink in. And then you still have to accept it. Once I accepted that, and once I saw it wasn't my fault, it wasn't a choice. I don't even remember it. That's how bad it was. That's an indicator to me that it was so bad that my little brain was like, nope, this
Yeah.
part you don't need to know, you don't need to remember. But it still happened because the evidence is there, the trauma is in place.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I knew what had happened or not, I mean, there's other abuse that I was fully aware of, but that trauma, I didn't even know that I had that in me. So
Right.
what you were saying is how a lot of people just don't realize that it's trauma,
Mm-hmm.
or they say it's trauma, but it's so traumatized, and it's more like,
Right.
or do you believe, like how you just said that in a way that makes me think you don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hard pill to swallow when you're looking at accepting the idea that someone cared so little about you that they would just abuse you for their own good, like for their own pleasure, for their own urges, or whatever you want to call it. I don't accept that I had anything to do with that. That's the first step in looking at trauma for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, it's there.
Right.
Now what do I do? But getting to the point of understanding that there's trauma in you is really challenging for a lot of people. Do you remember just a time or a period in your life where you went, okay, I have trauma. I know it. I accept it. I know it
Mm.
doesn't always look like that for people.
Yeah. That's a really good question. Well, actually, I think it was after the sexual assault in 2017, because the change in me was so drastic. I went through my whole life being like, yeah, I know I was sexually abused, but it didn't bother me. Like, I'm fine. I'm resilient. Like, I'm not one of those people that's going to crumble because of something like that happening to me, which I think a lot of people do. They think, nope, this didn't affect me. This didn't bother me. But
Yeah.
then when you're seeing, like, well, what might be at the root of my substance dependence, and what might be at the root of, me having these just massive emotional outbursts, or there's like all of this other evidence that, wait, no, something, maybe this did affect me. So, yeah, I think it wasn't until I started seeing a therapist, or my therapist, who's great. Shout out Mark if you're watching this, in like 2019, which it still took me 2 years to go see a therapist after the sexual assault. But like, I had gotten so bad. I was agoraphobic. Like, I couldn't even leave my bedroom. So I was like, okay, I need some help. This is not normal. And, it was through working with Mark and like finding out my whole history that he was like, hey, you realize you have a significant amount of childhood trauma as well. And, all of these things. And, now that I've learned so much more about trauma and how that manifests in people throughout their lives, it's like very clear to me, like, oh yeah, no, those things absolutely were traumatic to me.
Right. One of the things I like to point out in my experience was, for my entire life, I knew I had um, addiction issues, substance abuse issues. And so it was constant. If I could just stop drinking, using drugs, like I'll be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do that finally, and I wasn't good to go. Like it was that I just got rid of the only tool I knew would help, but that had
Right.
worn it. I had worn that out. So I was even worse. Like it was just really messing me up. So I guess addiction wasn't my problem. It was the problem I was focusing on that was a solution that eventually I wore out and turned it into a problem.
Right. Right.
But removing that simply allowed the haze to lift and I could see the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 2019 when I started really kind of looking at my abuse, my sexual abuse as a child, physical abuse, and what that did to me in terms of brain, nervous system, like decision making, emotional regulate, like all these things that I just kind of started to learn a little bit about, just all went right to the middle where that trauma was. So then last year in October, I got to a point where I'm like, I can't do this. This is not working. I need help. And then went to treatment, and we learned so much about trauma there. I was there for complex PTSD, childhood abuse, trauma, because I hadn't been using anything for a couple of years by then,
Wow.
but it stays in you. And anyone that's watching that hasn't read The Body Keeps the Score, please read that. It's a seminal work on trauma and the body and how that all works. So I'd been holding this trauma inside and covering it up and was now willing to address it. But I had to go through that whole, okay, yes, this is what this is. And this is how it's coming out, the ways it's coming out. And then I start to learn about how I can change those things. And quickly I became convinced that it's a neurological issue because of my knowledge and understanding and learning and willingness. And all of that has not been able to just change the way I think, right? It
Right.
doesn't work like that. I've had to work really hard, and I still have days like yesterday where I was just a mess. And my critics going, oh yeah, you're putting out videos on trauma, but you can't even fucking handle yourself. Like, that self, the critic.
The who do you
But
think you are?
yeah, yeah. I just saw it as you need to get over it, leave it in the past. I was told that like it needs
Mm-hmm.
to stay in the past. But no, my nervous system truly is different because of what happened to me. And that allows me some freedom to make choices about it. Like
Yeah.
that wasn't my choice, but do I like the way that it affects me in daily life? No. So yeah, I want to work on it. I want to change it. But
Mm-hmm.
until you realize that that trauma is there and why it's there, you can't really heal from something that you don't know you have or understand how to do it. That makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you really nailed it. And, an interesting thing too about trauma, especially for people like us where we have childhood trauma, it's actually not a requirement that you can remember what happened or be able to, tell a truthful narrative of your experience. Because again, trauma and addressing trauma has nothing to do with the event itself. It's okay, how did this affect you? That's what we can work on. Because again, like you said, you can't change anything about the past, but that doesn't mean then that it's just hopeless. It's just you have to actually work on trauma.
Right. And I even went through the whole like I found out where this dude lives, the one that was sexually abusing me. I had his address. I mean, I took it far enough to where I went, okay, the only next step is to go like face to face with this dude. And I was thinking, yeah, that would be a really, really bad idea. I know
Yeah.
some people are able to be in situations where they like meet their abuser. I've seen examples of that, but
Hmm.
I was like, my life is so good right now. Yeah, this sucks, but I could completely ruin my life
Right.
with showing up at his doorstep, right?
And then he would win.
Yes. So the way to take my power back was to know that that could be an option, that that was an option,
Mm-hmm.
and choose to not take that option. Like that was huge for me because one, I didn't want to be in jail. Like that
Right.
couldn't be good. But two, it wouldn't have done anything. It wouldn't have changed anything. And it would
Right.
have created for me an even bigger problem.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was important to recognize that trauma existed inside of me. And I knew how that happened. And I started to see how that affected me in daily life in negative ways.
Mm-hmm.
Then fourth, I was able to take a step toward healing, acceptance and learning. And I have to learn everything I can about anything I get obsessed with. And healing was, and still is to some degree, an obsession for me. Like I know where I want to be and I'm not there. And so I'm doing something every day to move in that direction. That's what it looked like for me, but I'm never going to be at an end point. There's no end game. There's no extraction of shame or trauma or all these negative things. And that acceptance is what's allowing me to move forward and do stuff like this, where I'm working with you in order to help each other, but hopefully the community at large.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I'm still, like I said, I'm still in therapy. I still struggle with the effects of trauma, but I'm getting a lot better. I can leave my home. Can,
Right.
like you do get better. It's not that you're just stuck with trauma, but you do have to do something about it because it has actually rewired your brain and your body. So it's not something you can just decide, no, I'm just not going to let this bother me.
Right. Because I've tried that.
Yeah, and me too. Guess what? It doesn't work. I was talking to my therapist about the same thing about like I know where he lives. I know I know his Facebook profile and like I'll fantasize about all kinds of ways of hurting him. Or like yesterday I was like I want to just like write to everyone on his Facebook account letting him know what
Their
he did.
post. Yeah.
But it's like what would that solve? Like really what would that it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't change anything. But man, the injustice of it sometimes just really feels unfair.
Fuck. You gotta be kidding me. That the sense of injustice that lives inside of me is shocking sometimes.
No, I know
But
it. I know what it's like.
yeah.
But all right, let's move on to shame. And for this, we really relied on our, I think, favorite shame researcher, Brene Brown.
Yeah. Brene's
Yeah,
awesome.
she's great. I'll put links in the description to her two TED Talks because they're phenomenal.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So I feel like this quote from her is probably the best is shame is not guilt. Shame is a focus on self. Guilt is a focus on behavior. Shame, I am bad. Guilt, I did something bad.
Yeah. That's a perfect thing to open with as far as shame goes. And
Mm-hmm.
that holds true with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm assuming same with you.
Yes. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that I was just trying to remember. I don't think I could have articulated that I had shame. I didn't know anything about all this stuff forever. But yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to call it shame. I felt bad.
It
Or,
just and it just feels like you because it's your own thoughts usually being like you're too much or you're not enough or you're not worthy of love, you don't belong. And I think we talked about shame too in our last episode of some of the ways that manifests itself in our lives.
yeah, we did touch on it. But again, it looks different for everyone. But
Mm-hmm.
this idea of shame being being something that is an indicator that you are bad versus you did something bad. The result of that it can be so devastating
Mm-hmm.
because when we attach our self-worth to any measuring stick, you're going to feel shitty. Shame just puts everything on me. Like this wouldn't have happened if, or I could have prevented it if, or it, those are all things about how I feel about myself. And
Right.
I asked my therapist a few weeks ago, we were talking about shame and how I just struggle with it daily. And sometimes it's just popping up. And like yesterday, it was just like dripping off of me. So I was like, where, like anger, there's healthy anger,
Mm-hmm.
there's healthy sadness.
Right.
These things that I used to avoid like the plague, not so much anger, but I wouldn't even like express it that much, but I felt it. But I asked him, I go, so where does shame fall into this? Is there a healthy residence somewhere in us for shame? Like where it, he's like, nope.
Yeah. No.
So shame is like handed to us. Like you're not
Yeah.
shamed when you're 2 or 3, or we're taught it, and it goes hand in hand with trauma,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it doesn't make fucking sense. That this is the other thing. When you're abused as a child, you often develop this sense of you're bad because you're being hurt by other people, and that wouldn't happen if you weren't bad,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's deductive reasoning at its like most elementary level. But you carry that without question into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
my self-confidence, my sense of self-worth, all these things are drained when I'm living in shame. And shame is one of those things that doesn't belong. A
Right.
lot of people struggle with the whole like anger, oh, I should never be angry because that's just not. No, it's okay to be angry. And when you hold that in, it causes other problems. Shame, you hold it in, and yeah, it causes other problems, but it shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
finding that out was really helpful for me. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Just to add to that, I forgot to include that again, this is Brene Brown. Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Guilt is like a pro-social behavior. Like thinking of existing in a community. Yeah, you should feel guilt if you have done something bad, that harms the group. But
and if you
shame
don't,
is this whole other thing. It's no, I am bad. I am so deeply flawed that I don't even belong here. I can't tell people what happened, and shame thrives in secrecy and silence.
don't we know it? And shame, that that intense shame,
Hmm.
the deeper and darker it gets, the ultimate end of the path is often suicide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like this
Been there
stuff
many
gets
times myself.
right. We've both had suicidal thoughts throughout our lives. And when you think about it, it's like that's shame is, I think, the only thing that can do that to me, that can put me in a state where I'm almost ready to end it all. That's
Yes.
what shame can do. It's so insidious and so strong in people with trauma often, and more often with developmental trauma,
Hmm.
like childhood physical abuse or sexual
Yeah.
abuse, because you grow up with the understanding that people do these things to you. And even though it feels wrong and it's painful and it hurts and you don't like it, that's your life. And so you don't go to school and say, hey, okay, so I was being sexually abused the other day. And,
Right.
how did you respond? Like, that's not what kids do. They can't do that. They don't understand.
Kids
So
don't
that,
realize it's happening to anybody else. They think it's just them.
yeah. And so you don't want to talk about it because you don't want anyone to know because you're the only one.
Hmm. Well, and
And
it's
again,
because you think I'm somehow this thing that has happened to me has made me so bad that if I tell anybody about this, then that's it. They'll know that I'm not worthy of love and belonging because of this thing that's happening to me.
yeah. Wow. Okay. So when we talk about shame and trauma, it can
Hmm.
look different for different people. It can show up in different ways. So in my life, just to give some examples, shame pops up in a way that makes me hate myself. So I was never the person that was mean to someone else. I've never purposely went after someone before, like to do them harm or to say horrible things. Or I'm sure I did some gossiping or talk shit about somebody like in college or what. But even in high school, I just wasn't that guy. Everything that happened in my life that was not good, I somehow felt that there was a reason it happened to me and no one else. And so that started that shame to develop. And so every relationship I look at, it's with suspicion, mistrust,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little inkling of hope that it's going to turn out,
Yeah.
but it probably won't. So just your perspective on relationships, performance. So like it could be work. I always struggled with, and I never got like a bad performance review, like a teacher twice a year, we would do like a review. Never once had a bad one. I was good at what I did,
Mm-hmm.
but any feedback I got was tainted. I was like, even though it was a really good review, I was like, oh, of course yeah, point that out. Or it just coats everything in this idea that it's like I validate me in shame by going, oh, yeah, well, they pointed that out. Obviously, they did that because whatever, fill in the blank. But and then the other way is anything that goes wrong that I'm trying to accomplish, right? Because I'm trying to successfully do a task or whatever it is. When things go wrong, it's my fault and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Simple task, complicated task, I don't care. It's always the first person I blame is me. And then if somebody admits fault or whatever, and it's not what I thought it was, oh, okay. But I will beat myself up first
Right.
because of shame. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, of course. If something goes wrong, or I especially feel it if, even if it's not true, but I think I've upset someone, it just starts this horrible shame spiral and like completely activates my nervous system. It's awful. But I think for me, one of the ways I notice it showing up most in my life is with perfectionism. And I can never do everything or really anything perfect. So then I just beat myself up for even trying. And it just makes me feel even worse because, like, of course I can't do this. I'm a piece of shit. Like, obviously, like, I can't do anything.
But I need it to be perfect.
Right, right. But again, there is no perfect. There is absolutely no perfect. But I mean, so like, okay, one example is the very first video that I ever did was on the adverse childhood experiences study because it was so eye opening to me that I felt like people need to know about this.
And they can find that on your channel, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'll put a link to it.
Yeah.
And what I had set out to do was talk about the study and then use my own life as a way of, showing like all of this is real. Like every single thing that this study says happens has happened at the time, that it says that it would in my life. Like I followed a very predictable path. And after 3 years of working on this video or this script, I continuously could not manage to make the video. And the only way that I was able to do it was once I took my whole story out of it. And I realized it's because of shame. It's because I was like, I can't tell people that this stuff has happened to me. I can't. Like, there's no way. Yeah, I just would never have the chance of being normal, I guess, or seen as normal if people knew what had happened to me. Now, of course,
But
that's not
side
true.
note, you did share your story
I
as
did.
a different video and it was phenomenal and very brave. And
Thank
so
you.
you did it. It's just you had to realize that you couldn't do it because of shame with that other one. So, but yeah, you guys check it out. Like it's awesome. Like
Thank
very,
you.
very good work.
It also still took me 2 years after my ACE study video to do it. So it actually took me like 5 years to be able to work up the courage to do this because I was so convinced that yeah, the fault would be so bad. And I think that's probably the video that I've received the most heartbreaking but positive responses to because it's the story of so many of us.
Right. Yeah. When you get the comments and you realize, okay, first of all, this is why I'm putting this out there. I can
Mm-hmm.
help myself, but also others. But you realize how many people are in the same boat as us or, you know, like similar,
Mm-hmm.
but can't either accept it or has accepted it, but works on it very quietly, silently in the like darkness. Like they work on themselves over here and don't let everyone know. And that's been a normal sort of scenario for as long as I know. It's only recently getting to where people like us are talking more about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very telling, I think, as to how intimately connected shame and trauma are.
Mm-hmm.
At least developmental trauma. I guess we should clear because trauma can happen as an adult and it's a very different, it's still awful. It can be devastating, but you have more of a capacity to work with it, right?
Yeah.
But as
Well,
children,
maybe. I mean, yeah, more so than a
maybe,
child, but it's
yeah,
still
just
difficult.
adult and child,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different scenario, but that doesn't minimize like either one. You don't have the concept of shame as a child. It's just a feeling. Or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have a definition or a thing that I knew was called trauma. It's just how you are, like you said earlier. It's just the way you operate. And once you find out that that's why, it's like, oh my God, I've been living this way because of this.
Yeah.
And I would
Yeah.
like to change some of it. But trauma and shame go hand in hand almost always.
Yeah.
And in addiction to, I've been in a lot of 12-step rooms and meetings and met so many people, addicts, we almost always have a history of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
If they say they don't, there's a really good chance that it's there, but
They don't know it.
they don't know.
Or just, yeah, either don't know that something has happened, like they just don't have the memory of it, or they don't realize that the things that had happened were traumatic, or they just can't admit that it happened, or maybe tell other people that it happened. But yeah, it's been my
Yeah.
experience too. Pretty much everyone that I've ever known who's had substance dependence issues has a history of trauma. And also, more often than not, it's childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But not always, though, because, I was married. I was married to someone in the military, and I saw, what happened when they came back from Afghanistan. Like, even though they all had very similar experiences, there was just a couple of people in the unit that very clearly had PTSD. And so I have a quote here from Dr. Kolk that I think kind of might explain maybe how we see it more in adults. So long after a traumatic experience is over, it may be reactivated at the slightest hint of danger and mobilize disturbed brain circuits and secrete massive amounts of stress hormones. This precipitates unpleasant emotions, intense physical sensations, and impulsive and aggressive actions. These post traumatic reactions feel incomprehensible and overwhelming. Feeling out of control, survivors of trauma often begin to fear that they are damaged to the core and beyond redemption. I mean, that's how it works with me, or at least did before I started understanding myself more. I just I don't understand why I'm feeling this way, why I'm, so angry and aggressive and impulsive. Again, like it just felt so incomprehensible and overwhelming. And nobody else around me was acting that way. So it just felt like, oh, yeah, no, it's me. There's just something so deeply wrong with me that I'm this way.
Mm-hmm. And that sets you apart from others in not such a cool way. Right. Yeah. Just broken. That, that would be a word that I would use to describe myself not that long ago. I'm just
Yeah.
broken. That, even that, I don't, damaged. Okay. Yeah. But I'm not irreparable. I'm not like beyond help. I'm not, or I wouldn't be sitting here. Shame is something that doesn't have to be in our lives, doesn't belong in our lives, and was the result of events that should never have happened to us. So you would think, this is how my brain works. You would think, knowing all this and wanting to be a healthy, well adjusted human and happy and all that, you could just say, you know what? Trauma has no place in my life. Shame has no place in my life. But it doesn't work that way because the brain has been changed. It's not just choice to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. It's not just negative thinking. It's not just having a bad attitude or dwelling on the past. It's,
Right.
nope, my brain is different as a result of this.
And when people mention stuff like that, like, yeah, that was hard, but I mean, like that happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's dismissive in a way that brings up more shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Because you know you're still affected by it.
And they said that I should just forget about it, but I can't.
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
really fucked up. And then you start thinking, well, now I guess I'll never be able to like get out of this shame or whatever. Like it's so challenging in that it's something that doesn't belong, has no place in my life, but I can't just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. It's rewiring that brain.
Do you know what a great way is to start working on shame? Talking about what happened. Sharing
Hey,
it with people.
I should start doing that.
I know. Here, Brene Brown says, shame hates it when we reach out and tell our story. It hates having words wrapped around it. It can't survive being shared.
Wow.
So,
That's
yeah.
really powerful. Yeah. When you talk about it, it's like it releases some of the shame. It sounds like it's like letting air out of a tire.
Yeah.
Like you talk about it and it kind of releases some of the pressure, can deflate it, make it not so, I don't know. That doesn't really work.
No, I get what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's actually a question or a quote from Dr. Vanderkolk that I think is speaking to what you're saying. So the natural state of humans is to be in connection. Trauma pulls people out of connection. The healing journey is about restoring that. And that's what shame does. It isolates us. It makes us feel like we're those are all the normal good people and I'm over here. But if you can just share either your story or what you're going through with even just one person to start with and feel that connection, see this person's actually showing me empathy and maybe they've had similar experiences, that is so powerful because you suddenly feel like you're just part of the human race again.
Yeah. You're not alone
Yeah.
because it does. Shame isolates us. And the antidote is connection.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the shame, we isolate and don't get that connection. Like it pulls you out of relationships and connection with others, even on a superficial level.
Well, and it disconnects us from ourselves too.
That, yes. And then I can stay connected to others on a superficial level when I have my drugs or alcohol
Mm-hmm.
because you have a common interest, doesn't matter who the person is. And you just kind of stay focused on that and not have to feel like you're so messed up and weird and damaged and all that.
Right.
And you can feel good when you use substances. It can keep the shame in check. It just doesn't go away. That was
All
the
right.
problem that I found. I was really good at being a high functioning addict. No one would have thought.
Same.
It was a tool, right? But it can't keep it tucked away forever.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get older and I'm ahead of the game, but you and I'm further along, it just gets worse. Like the longer you're able to suppress and repress and like stuff your feelings and so that you don't feel shame, it just builds. That
Right.
pressure builds. And like you said, talking with someone, but I'll also bring up the point that I never felt safe sharing my whole self with someone else.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Right.
Because the shame.
Right. And so keeping it a secret is like almost a charge. Like this goal is to be normal, knowing you're not,
Mm-hmm.
that you have this. And so it gets so overwhelming. And then the need to connect with others is kind of taken away because you feel that if you do, because we also have a lot of issues with trust, right? I,
Yeah,
I know I do.
absolutely. Yeah, me too.
There's not, Megan and I were talking yesterday, and I said, when I meet someone, I don't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mean or mad at them or think anything negative about them. I just don't trust you. And as you gain my trust, I don't even let the person know. But then we get to a point where I'm like, okay, I totally trust this person. Okay. It's like with you, like we can say anything to each other. It's not,
Yeah.
we get it. We understand. You have somebody that you want to share with, that you love and respect and want to, what happens if it doesn't land right?
Right. And yeah,
So
and
then
you've
fear.
there's the fear of rejection, the fear of losing potentially the most significant and safe relationship you have in your life,
Mm-hmm. But when
which
it,
doesn't happen, but it's just a lie we tell ourselves.
yeah. Have you ever told anyone about any of your abuse and them say, ew, that you're
Never.
really fucked up. That's awful.
Never.
I don't want to be your friend. Like that's not a thing, right?
Never. I've never had it happen. I've never had anyone distance themselves from me. It even if people haven't experienced something like that directly, people want to show up for you. People want to be there to show you like, hey, I might not fully understand what happened to you or what's going on, but I care about you and I'm here. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't change how I see you or how I view you because you are not the things that happened to you. And yeah, I've
And
never.
hearing that is so healing.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever had it happen to you? Has anyone just been like, ew, okay, nope, nope.
Yeah. Can't hang out with you. No, most people, especially at this point, when I'm public about it or talk about it with somebody, it's either they respect me and am complimentary, like, hey, good for you for like working on this. Maybe they don't have trauma, or it rubs people a little bit in a way because they have their own trauma that hasn't been looked at, or
Hmm.
they don't want to. They're in that point of, yeah, I don't want to deal with that right now. So that would be the only thing I can think of. But I haven't even had an experience like that where somebody has said, yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah,
And
me
then,
either. But the only thing I think I really see is that as a society, still, we are so uncomfortable talking about or acknowledging childhood sexual abuse. It's like we all universally agree that's pretty much the worst thing that can ever happen to a kid. And nobody wants to allow that to happen. But we're all still so afraid of even acknowledging that it's happening and happening on such a huge scale. And so, yeah, I
mm,
might not always tell people, especially if I don't know that I can trust them or like if I don't know that it's not going to affect them. Because that's the other thing too, is I worry about potentially triggering other people. If I just tell them like, oh yeah, I was sexually abused as a kid, then they might just be like, okay, whoa, all right. I was not planning on going there. Like, wait a second. It's
well,
like, I don't want to do that to people.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but they don't know what to do with it sometimes, and then I feel bad about that too. It's like somebody that genuinely cares. They're a kind, compassionate person, but it is uncomfortable because what do they do with that? So you do have to be a little bit careful who you just throw these things out to.
Hmm.
I tend to start with, well, yeah, I've got trauma from kind of a rough childhood. Like I'll say it in that way or something.
Yeah.
If they want to like, oh, that's too bad to hear. I mean, if you want to talk about it, or they'll say, oh man, yeah, that's a bummer. And then move on. You can
Hmm.
pick up on it's like, okay, that's not something they're comfortable just throwing out for a conversation topic.
Yeah.
And I try to respect that too. Like it can hit too close to home for some people.
Right. Well, I think for me too, I've had to kind of get used to, necessarily used to telling people that, I had a fucked up childhood. But because I have a disability now, because I have, OSDD, when if I have to tell people for some reason that I'm disabled, then they look at me and they're like,
Right.
"Huh? Like, what do you mean?" It's like, "Oh, well, I have, this disorder." And then them just being curious, like, "Oh gosh, like how do you get that?" It's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, about that." Okay, I guess we're going to do that. So
Well,
I think I've had to get a little more comfortable doing that. But yeah, I don't necessarily just be like, oh well, I was sexually abused as a kid. No.
right.
You can
Yeah.
you can sanitize it, I guess, a little bit and still get
Yeah.
the point across.
It's like farting in public. You just never know like how it's going to
You
affect
never
us.
know. Never trust a fart in
And you
public.
throw around the word trauma. It's like, yeah, people, it's a little like awkward, even though it's a very common thing.
Hmm.
People just don't know how to deal with it. So, well, I think we should also look at ways that you and I as individuals have kind of tried or learned to cope with shame. Like, what are you doing to address it? Cause I'm
Um,
thinking of this too. I don't have
yeah.
like an answer right away.
I don't necessarily have a great answer, but really for me, it's been talking about it. It's talking about it on YouTube, sharing it, putting out into the world. The feedback that I get is not rejection, it's connection, and actively working to have connections with people, I think is really what's been helping me the most. But like I
Yeah.
still feel shame all the time, but it's getting better.
Yeah. I wonder when it goes away. I'd be excited to hear about that.
That would be wonderful.
I find that I have a lot of conversations with myself
Hmm.
because I've been working so much with no bad parts with internal family systems therapy.
Yeah.
So I look at shame as an outsider that's come into the neighborhood and no one likes them.
Hmm.
And I try to look at it as okay, I'm not trying to like kill shame. I want to talk to it and get it to leave somehow. Like this is my way of thinking of it. So when shame comes up, I look at what I'm doing. Is my critic there as well?
Yeah.
Like who else is in the room with me? And I know that sounds crazy for those of you that don't understand internal family systems, but it's really helpful to look at it as an entity or a part of me.
Hmm.
Now, even though shame doesn't have a place and shouldn't be there, the fact of the matter is it is. And I've accepted that. So as it comes up, I try to do things to counter, like if I'm failing at something I'm doing, whether it's tightening a bolt or like roasting a batch of coffee or whatever it is I'm doing, I see shame pop up a lot more these days and just go, yeah, no, not right now. Like sometimes I'll literally say that. Nope,
Good.
not right now. I'm doing fine. Like it's, I'm alone a lot, so I can do that and people aren't around. Like I'm careful in public, but I'll, I'll talk to my parts. Be like, hey, no, hey, shame, backseat, buddy. Like I got stuff to do right now and you're going to slow me down. Things like that have been what's helped me the most instead of being afraid of it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
step
Yeah.
up and be like, look, you don't get to come in and just take over. You have, but now things are changing, right? We're changing as a family. We need different roles. And so practically speaking, it's just being aware of the shame when it pops up and then making note of the situation or activity I'm doing where I feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then I can back up a little and go, well, that was just, yeah, I didn't sleep well last night. I was being hard on myself. I think I'm good. Like a review, like a check-in, like we
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing recently to work with that. And then of course talking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll talk to Megan. I talk to you. I've got some good buddies that I can call them and just say, look, I need a minute. Like, can I talk to you?
You can call me.
I I know. But it's something that the more familiar I get with it, I hate it. I hate shame, but it becomes more familiar. And the more familiar I get with when it shows up, what it looks like, how it manifests in different ways, I'm able to get that relationship going and have a little say so.
Yeah.
Up until this point, it's been just shame pops up and it's like everybody just kind of, uh-oh, like something went wrong.
Right.
So not being afraid of it, but I hate it. I hate feeling shame. It's
Yeah.
an awful feeling.
It's awful. It is the worst. It is such an intensely painful emotion. But what you're able to do, again, like I'm not a therapist, I don't know if this is what's happening, but what it sounds like to me is that when you're able to recognize shame come up and you're able to like divorce yourself from it, even if you're still feeling it, but just to recognize like, nope, this is not me. Because that's the thing with shame. It's you think it's you. The thoughts that it tells you is you think that that's you and that it's real. But the fact that you're able to be like, nope, nope, I recognize you. Not right now. You're starting to separate yourself from this deeply ingrained belief that it belongs there and that the things that it tells you are true.
Mhm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I had someone, so my last video on Real Chatter on
Great
my
channel.
channel, for those of you that haven't gone to look at our channels yet, it's called Real Chatter. And it was negative thinking, trauma and negative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of the title I used. And I was simply talking about how I just can be so negative about all these things. And somebody asked, is the, I'm trying to think of how this is how they phrased it. I thought it was awesome. Is the, they said like, thank you, all this. They said, is the voice you wake up with negative? And is it only negative to others or yourself?
Mm.
Like, I thought that was a really great question. And my response was, I almost always turn negativity into a let's beat up Chad session. Like I
Same.
turn on myself. I don't really have the ability to just outright be mean to people
Me either. No.
and be like all in it and not give a shit what somebody thinks about how I'm like, I still try to be a great human and nice and kind and deal with it. But the way that, I lost trying to think of how to explain. Yeah, I don't know. I lost it,
I could
but
see where you're going
I
with
turn
it.
it on myself. Like shame is very hard on me and I'm hard on me already.
Because shame is
But
about you. It's not about other
yeah,
people.
but there are, I don't think you and I are similar in this sense, but there are people that because of what's happened to them and this trauma, they're pissed off at the world and you're going to know it.
That's true. That's very true.
It's
Yeah.
not their fault. They didn't do anything, whatever, but then they take that and run with it. I'm not explaining this like in medical terms, but it's just they become shitty people
Yeah.
because they've been so hurt.
Yeah.
And this is how they keep from having to connect with others and feel that stuff, keep everyone at a distance. I
Yeah.
never could be that way, but I was really hard on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Shame drove me to cutting. Like that was one of my behaviors is up to a certain point of dysregulation. I work with it. I'm trying to get myself under control, doing all these things. And then I would get to a point where I couldn't stop. I couldn't. And so I would, and it would force me into my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated that, brought more shame, but it was worth it to me to make things stop. Like these thoughts and these feelings and this chaos inside of me. And for people that have never experienced this or even read about it, like it really sounds awful that you would yourself in order to stop feeling. It's not, it doesn't make sense. But
Actually, it does.
physiologically, it does work,
Yeah,
like what it does to you. But there's inherent dangers and it can become an addiction and you're doing
absolutely.
damage to your body. Gratefully, that's been a while since that I've ever got, since I've gotten to that point. But up until last October, treatment, like it had become something that I had to do in order to like get myself up off the ground sometimes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's really bad. And I know people struggle with that and other ways of like bringing themselves back, or they do disassociate, right? That's
I wonder
another,
who does that.
I don't know, but it's all about, yeah, you need to come back to your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's similar in that I had a technique for bringing myself back in my body and make things stop, but it's just not healthy.
It's not, and it's not addressing what's at the root of it. So it'll get worse and worse, and you're hurting yourself. You're opening up yourself to all kinds of medical issues and infections, and yeah, it doesn't really get at what's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
had a brief stint of that as a teen,
Uh-huh.
but I think that the self harm way that it shows up for me is with an eating disorder. And that's something I've actually been struggling with a lot lately.
Oh.
Is like not thankfully not giving into it, but if I'm just feeling shitty, I'll look at myself in the mirror and it's like, oh, you fat piece of shit. Like, look at you can't control yourself. You can't control anything that you're doing. And it's like, I just direct all of these negative thoughts to myself, but it's a focus on my body. It's really strange, but
That's shame in action, right?
yeah.
Now there's other like body, like how you view your body, that can be another, an eating or whatever. There is more to that. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's just like, oh, well, if you get rid of shame, but it's something that happens as a result of shame,
Mhm. Totally.
those negative thoughts. Yeah, we could just keep going. I don't want to like keep going too long, but
I know my laptop is at 4%. So
oh,
I think
geez.
I've got maybe like 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, to wrap up, we kind of talked about like just throwing out a couple of things that like we do to help with shame.
Mhm.
So we could just quickly review that. For you mentioned yoga, meditation. Those are regular practices that are very helpful. Any health practice that improves your mental health, your well-being will help alleviate shame.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm doing the most of is the internal family systems model, like developing relationships with my parts. That can really help with shame because I'm becoming more intimately connected to myself.
Yeah.
What else like could people, I'm talking like to
Yeah.
a trust, even if it just needs, you need to start with a therapist, right? That would be a great start for someone.
Yeah, but again, not everybody has access to that. So if you
Uh,
do, for sure, do therapy. But I would even say like, watching videos like this or of other people talking about shame is really helpful because even if you're not able to have that conversation directly, you can still start to feel like I'm a little normal. Actually, yeah, the thing that changed it completely for me was Tim Ferriss decided, thankfully, to put out a video talking about his own struggle, dealing with childhood sexual abuse and how that started to really make his life fall apart. And he was somebody that I really idolize. I still do. But, especially when stuff really fell apart for me, I looked at him and I was like, oh, I could never be like him. Like he has a different brain. He hasn't had all of the same shit that I have. Like there's no way I could ever be like him. And then so to have him just tell his story, to be brave enough to tell his story, it's in a YouTube video. I'll put it in the description. And to hear like, oh no, he's actually struggling with absolutely everything that I am, including dissociation. It was just like wait, if someone like Tim Ferriss is struggling with this, maybe I'm
And
not alone. Maybe it's not just me.
I bet Tim felt so good after getting that. Like, people aren't going to stop following Tim Ferriss or reading his stuff or because he was sexually abused as a kid, but that was his story to tell. And he had to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
Wildly successful by
Yeah.
any standard that we could tell. And now to throw this on top, I'm like, dude, Scott, he's got something going. Like, he's growing and maturing and healing. He's done all this without talking about that. I don't know his full story, but like Oprah, she just recently did that series with Prince. Is it Prince Henry?
Oh, Prince Harry? I didn't see it.
And some big name people are coming out, like Lady Gaga. Love Lady Gaga.
Me too.
She talks about her shit. So the more people that are talking like that, I think yeah, you're right. It's just going to start normalizing it if we hear more Tim Ferrisses and Lady Gaga and all these people. I know we're just regular everyday people. We're not famous or anything.
No.
But take away the fame and we're all traumatized individuals trying to figure this stuff out and not live in shame. So, by the way, before we get off, Heather's battery dies.
I know.
Like and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe.
Yes.
But also, if you're comfortable, throw something in the comment. Like, do you struggle with shame? Like, you put what you want, but if you're so inclined, say, yeah, I struggle with shame and this is what I do and it helps. Maybe that would help other people if they read the comments and it would be giving voice to your trauma, but only do it if you're comfortable. There's no pressure at all.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. I think this is really great.
Yeah.
I think just the last thing I wanted to add, I'm at 1%. Because peer support is so helpful in healing. We're open to you guys submitting us questions, like if you want to DM us or email us. And again, we're not therapists, just peer support. We could give you our opinion or maybe talk about it on a future episode.
Yeah, please do. Join in the community and the conversation.
Yep.
All right. Personally, I always like to tell everyone, I love you. You're not alone. You're not broken or fucked up. You're just dealing with some heavy stuff. And so are we. And we really hope that you can heal with us as we do this more.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, friend.
Until next time. Thanks, Heather. You're awesome.
You're awesome.
All right. You guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.